any deal that would have been made would have been better for them than the one they have right now. That's why I was surprised they did this.
I wish I had some good news. Welcome back to Moose on Loose. My name's David. Today we've got Donald Trump now increasing the tariff rate by 10% across the board because of what happened with Doug Ford, but not because of Doug Ford. He was the linchpin. He was the straw that broke the camel's back. It's actually because of Mark Carney. And Trump's team even says that. The way that Carney and his team have been conducting themselves in negotiations, Trump's basically snapped. He has had enough of the Liberal Party playing their games, and Canadians will now suffer for it. Let's jump into this. Starting this one off, this is the only good news I've got, but this is great news because we've got Pierre Poilievre once again leading in the polls. 41% to 40% coming from Abacus data, one of the most trusted pollsters out there. This is 5 of the last handful of polls here that he's been the lead. I think it's only the Nanos ones where he's not leading. There's one Ecos poll, I'm not even going to show it because it's like outrageous numbers. It looks like manufacturing data. Okay, now that I mentioned it, I know people will be curious. Here's the poll: 43% Liberal, 32% Conservative. This is a ridiculous poll. Once again, polling data that comes out of Ecos shouldn't be treated seriously because it's garbage data. So here's a real poll: 41 to 40%. So what's happening in the news right now is hurting Carney. So where's Carney right now? He's off in Kuala Lumpur for the ASEAN summit here. And who's that? It's his wife going on a world tour. It's interesting how she's always there and she's at the UN giving a speech. How much are taxpayers paying her to give that speech at the UN? Why is she a speaker at the UN? I didn't see any other leader's spouse or wife speaking at the UN. The answer is because she's an eco-green nut just like him, and that's a fundamental of the UN. I said it before and I'll say it again. She needs to stop wearing tablecloths and actually represent Canada in a positive light. Carney looks fine. He's got a suit on. This is not a one-off thing. She's always wearing these goofy outfits. So moving ahead here, we got some footage from Mackenzie Gray. Carney getting out of the vehicle here. So more of the same grip and grin.
Economic innovation, and his participation today in this region.
He's going to achieve a whole lot of nothing for Canadians while he's over there. And we've got this one here. This is a bit of a positive note. We've got Hanwha is willing to buy Canadian steel from producers such as Algoma, to build submarines and commercial ships, as well as liquefied natural gas to partner with Canada's Telesat and MDA on space satellite investments. This South Korean submarine producer is willing to buy stuff from Canadian companies. This sounds great, except when you read into this Algoma and Telesat. Well, in general, this is good for Canadian workers who work at those facilities. Once again, we've got Algoma here, this connection to Algoma Steel, Dennis Turcotte, managing partner, Brookfield Private Equity Group. And Telesat, I don't have on the board, should put it on here, as in this Telesat, the one where this guy, the CEO, Dan Goldberg, is good friends with Mark Carney. Telesat got a big stinking loan, interest-free loan for years. This is back in the Trudeau days, so what was it, last year? But Mark Carney was a financial advisor. So, I mean, that's all you need to know here. Seems anything that's good for Canada has to be good for Mark Carney and his friends. Meanwhile, we've got Torontonians going absolutely nuts about the Blue Jays. So I appreciate the patriotism here and the pride, because in Canada, we're starting to run out of everything else. But we do have 5,000 Albertans here. As Marty up north says, the individual Albertans are tired of being taken for granted for by Ottawa.
Thank you, Aaron.
Here's another angle of this. Massive crowd floods the legislature grounds demanding Alberta independence. This movement is getting stronger.
The flags waving, keep the energy up. We'll start in just a couple of minutes. Thank you.
I don't know if they have the numbers, but they have a sizable portion of the population that wants to leave Canada. Moving ahead, we've got Donald Trump imposing new tariffs on Canada here, as Food Professor pointing out, this is so embarrassing. Yeah, breaking U.S. President Donald Trump says he's punishing Canada with extra 10% tariffs for not putting down the anti-tariff ad sooner. And with that, we've got CBC running this. Ontario's anti-tariff ad is clever, effective, and legally sound, experts say. Donald Trump says he's thinking of hiking tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what it pays now. So obviously he's over in Asia right now, so they're not putting this through right now, but he says he's going to be increasing this. As Mark Nixon points out, who wants to bet, the New Fear campaign just started with Donald Trump terminating trade negotiations with Canada. Now the Liberals will call an election on an orange man bad to try to steal a majority. Just wait. Yeah, that might happen here. If the Conservatives get in the way of the Liberals trying to build Canada strong, then this might go forward. That's why I think the Conservatives will let the budget go through. The blue flu, or maybe it's the NDP, support them one way or the other. clear, if the Conservatives get in the way here, the Liberals are going to try to run buck wild with this and use Orange Man bad again. And it seems the average Canadian who voted Liberal last time probably hasn't woken up to what's really going on, this guy ripping us off and greatly enriching himself. With that, we've got Donald Trump posting this: Canada caught red-handed putting up a fraudulent advertisement on Ronald Reagan's speech on tariffs. The Reagan Foundation said they created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan. So you can see Donald Trump does know what's going on now. His previous press conference, he didn't really know what was going on. He said it was an AI or whatever. So clearly he was briefed on it. Maybe they didn't give him all the information, or maybe just didn't care, but now he does know what's going on here. Selective editing, audio and video. The ad misrepresents a presidential radio address and did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. As far as I know, that presidential footage of Ronald Reagan is public domain, so really anyone can use it. Now, the way that the Ford government used it seems like foreign interference. That you shouldn't be doing that. It's like if Donald Trump started running ads in Canada about Mark Carney and his rampant conflicts of interest, how much money he's making off taxpayers like that. He would be interfering in Canada's politics, foreign interference. Maybe he should do that. The question is, was Mark Carney installed there so we're not getting a deal? Because they're both Americans, essentially. Mark Carney mostly invested in America. I think he was living in America before becoming prime minister down in New York, at least from what I've heard. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation Institute is reviewing its legal options in this matter. The sole purpose of this fraud was Canada's hope that the United States Supreme Court would come to their rescue on tariffs, and that they have used for years to hurt the United States. Now the United States is able to defend itself against high and overbearing Canadian tariffs and those from the rest of the world as well. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs for the purpose of national security and the economy, but Canada said he didn't. Their advertisement was to be taken down immediately, but they let it run last night during the World Series, knowing that it was a fraud because of a serious misrepresentation of the facts and hostile act. I am increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they are now paying. Thank you for your attention. What isn't true here is this, where it says national security and the economy, but Canada said he didn't. Ford's team didn't put any extra audio or anything in there. They just cut the ad, so it seemed like Reagan was an absolutist on never using tariffs. When he did use tariffs, he used them on the Japanese. He increased it 100% on car autos back in the day. We got this post out of Global News here, which compares the two, and I'll just show you a few seconds here. So look at this time code. You can see how this jumps up 5 minutes. I mentioned this in my video, but this shows it black and white.
Such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation
So you can see it jump from 50 some odd seconds up to 3 minutes now.
by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens.
See, they cut out 15 seconds there, jump up to 325.
Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world,
And you see now they're jumping back to 1 minute and 56 seconds. So they selectively edited this so it would have maximum impact. But it misrepresents Ronald Reagan, had no mention of the Japanese in here. We've got Brian Lilly posting this. This is what Ronald Reagan really thinks about tariffs.
One of the greatest contributions the United States can make to the world is to promote freedom as the key to economic growth. A creative, competitive America is the answer to a changing world, not trade wars that would close doors, create greater barriers, and destroy millions of jobs. We should always remember protectionism is destructionism. America's jobs, America's growth, America's future depend on trade that is free, open, and fair.
So it's quite clear that Ronald Reagan, if you put him on a spectrum between tariffs over here and free trade, from the center closer to this side, he's obviously not a tariff guy, but he did use them when he needed to.
This year, we have it within our power to take a major step toward a growing global economy and an expanding cycle of prosperity that reaches to all the free nations of this earth. I'm speaking of the historic free trade agreement negotiated between our country and Canada. And I can also tell you that we're determined to expand this concept south as well as north. Next month, I will be traveling to Mexico, where trade matters will be of foremost concern. And over the next several months, our Congress and the Canadian Parliament can make the start of such a North American accord a reality. Our goal must be a day when the free flow of trade from the tip of Tierra del Fuego to the Arctic Circle unites the people of the Western Hemisphere in a bond of mutually beneficial exchange, when all borders become what the U.S.-Canadian border so long has been, a meeting place rather than a dividing line.
I think what needs to happen now is Donald Trump should just come out and say what he wants. from Canada and tell exactly why they won't negotiate what they're trying to negotiate. Just make it public. Obviously, negotiating in private is better, but clear at this point, we're getting nothing. He should just blow it up and humiliate Mark Carney. The problem is if he's working with Mark Carney, if he helped install Mark Carney to make America stronger and help crumble Canada, then they're just going to keep this going on because it's better for America. I see there's a lot of theories about that. I mean, are Carney and Trump working together to make Canada the 51st state? Because that's what we're getting closer to here. And Liberal voters don't seem to get it. They voted for the wrong guy. Pierre Poilievre would have been the one to get a proper deal and defend Canada. Mark Carney's not doing that.
And try and break or find division within the Republican Party itself. I mean, that was sort of the shrewdness of the ad, but also the danger of the ad, to be quite frank as well. And it would seem to have very much upset the president.
You know, Rosie, the last time that we saw the president this upset, it was over the digital services tax. And he said that he was cutting off trade talks. And I believe that was shortly after he was, in fact, in Kananaskis. And there was, discussions that they were going to have a deadline in July. Everything was cordial. And then there was that social media post that went out from Donald Trump saying, I'm not talking to them anymore. This digital services tax is ridiculous. And then we saw the Carney government pull back on that. What do we think we'll see this time?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything else to pull back, to be quite honest. Not only did Canada dump that, and I should point out that the digital services tax was an irritant with Democratic administrations as well. So it's not just President Trump that didn't like that. But we've also now removed most of the counter tariffs, the retaliatory tariffs that were on various goods. The only thing that remains are sort of the way that we're dealing with the sectoral tariffs.
Like the dairy cartel. Concession after concession after concession, we're getting nothing in return. It's almost like an American is running Canada. An American who's protecting the dairy cartel. Who does Mark Carney know? Who's he friends with in the dairy cartel? This is a very hard nut for me to crack. I keep looking, I keep searching. If you have a tip, go to moosechart.com, my website here. Go to this section here with the moose and go onto this thing. Submit a tip, fill out some information there. You can do it anonymously, submit a link, send me information if you know who Mark Carney's connected to in the dairy cartel, because clearly that's the smoking gun here in this situation. Because Mark Carney brought in legislation to protect the dairy cartel just days before the negotiations started. That tells us everything we need to know. There's millions of dollars that people are making in there that Mark Carney is protecting. He's protecting his own to the detriment of all Canadians. I don't know if there's a big plan for Mark Carney and Donald Trump to get together and do this. Maybe Doug Ford's in on it. I don't know. What we do know, apparently, Donald Trump is pissed off with negotiating with Canada. So I think it's more likely, while Mark Carney had some dealings with Donald Trump with all this whole situation here, more connected through Elon Musk and Stripe and all of this, but not necessarily direct connections. But his direct connections are through his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his bailout property. So I think there's some extent of connections there. And maybe Trump's like, okay, I'll repay you back by helping you become prime minister, and then we're done. I honestly don't know. I don't know what their plan is. I don't know if they're working together, if this is just all separate. Doug Ford is a complete idiot. We do know that, but we've got some leaked audio here saying that Canada tried to influence our Supreme Court.
What can they do to get it back on track, though?
I mean, I'm satisfied with the deal we have. We have a deal right now that's very good for us. And any deal that would have been made would have been better for them than the one they have right now. That's why I was surprised they did this. If they did this to try and influence the Supreme Court, and many foreign countries aren't particularly happy, but they took advantage of us for years. For years and years, they took advantage. And presidents shouldn't have allowed that to happen, but they did. So, really, I don't think there's much they can do. I just assume leave it the way it is.
Will you meet with them?
You know, if you leave it the way it is, it's very good for us.
Yeah, and that's the fear here. We've got basically an American running Canada and Mark Carney, and the deal is already great for America. This is quite a tricky situation because Mark Carney, it's in his best interest with his 91% invested in America to have manufacturing move to America. That in general will boost his stock value because he wants the entire GDP of America to go up. We've got Doug Ford here, who actually does have a lot of leverage on Trump right now because this is getting so much attention. Now everyone wants to see the ad. Trump essentially blew up the ad bigger than it would have ever been seen by anyone. Probably most people in America want to see this now. And as long as they keep running it, it's leverage over Trump. That's why he brought in this 10% tariff, because he's going to smack down Doug Ford's leverage. Trump respects leverage. That's how he negotiates. He's not a guy who respects friendship. He uses it as a way to butter up and loosen up his opponent to get concessions, to get information. I mean, Trudeau let it slip up. He asked him straight up, trying to be friendly to Trudeau, hey, what would be the worst thing that happened to Canada? And Trudeau just said, oh, if you put tariffs on our auto sector or steel sector. He just let it slip out. And then what did Trump do? He went and did that. You can see here on the New York Post, Trudeau pleaded with Trump to not implement new levy because it would kill Canada's economy. He told them exactly what to do. And I don't think that's because Trudeau's heavily invested in America and he's playing a game here. I think it's just because Trudeau's a complete idiot. Meanwhile, we've got Gavin Newsom posting this, reading Mark Carney's book. We've got a complete clown show here. So what does Trump have to say about all of this?
What's your view on what Canada needs to do to get things back on track?
Well, Canada lied. I mean, what they did was terrible. They made up a fake statement by President Reagan. Reagan was a big supporter of tariffs when needed. And we need tariffs for national security. And they totally turned it around because they're getting hurt by tariffs and we're gaining by tariffs. They've used tariffs on us, but we had different presidents very successfully, and they've taken a lot of money out of our country, and now we're taking it all back. And so they went out and they made a fake commercial. The Reagan Foundation went crazy when they saw it because it was, the opposite. It was the opposite of what Ronald Reagan liked tariffs, and when necessary, he would use tariffs. We're in very good shape with that. But they took a commercial saying the exact opposite, Canada. So I'm very disappointed in Canada. They lied. I mean, it was a fraud what they did. Really, I don't think there's much they can do. I just assume leave it the way it is. If you leave it the way it is, it's very good for us.
Will you meet with Prime Minister Carney during this trip?
I don't have any intention of it, no.
Him saying he has no intention of meeting Carney. We also have Kevin Hassett, a top economic advisor to Trump, says that it's not the ad that really caused the cancellation of the trade talks with Canada. It is a built-up frustration. He also mentions that Trump doesn't have any plans to meet with Carney.
Yeah, obviously the President Truth subject that reveals his frustration with the actions and postures of the Canadians through months of negotiations, and we'll see how it goes.
On Canada, you said the president was frustrated, but is this just a knee-jerk reaction?
I think the frustration has built up over time. I've been involved in some of these negotiations, and the Canadians have been very difficult to negotiate with. And you look at all the countries around the world that we've made deals with, and the fact that we're now negotiating with Mexico separately reveals that it's not just about what one ad, that there's frustration that's built up.
And is he planning to...
I think this really shows us that it's probably not some big scheme where Donald Trump and Carney and Doug Ford are all doing this together to tank Canada. I think it's all separate. I think Mark Carney is working with Xi Jinping, probably has investments over in China we don't know about, but obviously wants America to do well because he's invested in America for the most part. Because in reality, both their ideologies are so different. Mark Carney's the net zero eco guy, and Donald Trump is the opposite spectrum. It would be a weird pairing if they are working this together.
Speak with the Prime Minister Carney when they're both in Asia this week, because this ad had nothing to do with Carney's government.
I don't have any information on that.
Mr. How concerned is the administration that the Supreme Court will not ultimately side with your view on the tariff policy? The president has been truthing a lot about the upcoming case.
I think that we have a very high level of confidence that the Supreme Court will side with us. We think we're on very strong grounds. I've been fishing through the briefs myself just to see what the arguments are. And I think that the case is very, very strong, and we're highly confident that they'll side with us. I even spoke in the Oval with the president about it last night, and I'd say the level of confidence is extremely high.
Mr. Hassett, just very quickly, what it has been so challenging about dealing with Canada in trade negotiations?
I guess the lack of flexibility, and also I would guess that leftover behaviors from like the Trudeau folks that can be very frustrating for people who are negotiating. So
leftover behaviors from the Trudeau folks can be very frustrating for those who are negotiating. We heard this from when Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader, went down to America too. So there's multiple different sources basically saying the same thing, but that the Carney Liberals are impossible to negotiate with. I think it's very likely this is what's really going on here. Carney doesn't want a deal because it's better for his stocks. He's over in Asia, probably meeting with Xi Jinping here soon, wants to strike a deal and get us closer with China, rolling out the net zero agenda, sell the solar panels that are made in China, the wind turbines, all all that. It's good for Xi Jinping. It's good for his eco-green agenda here, trying to push the carbon credit system. If you can get that system rolling out in a couple of countries, he knows it's not going to work in America. Although if you listen to how Carney talks about it, he does mention, well, America was on board with that before and presidents come and go and all that thing. So he's insinuating once a Democratic president gets back in the White House, they'll go back into that whole system and plug into Mark Carney's system, the carbon credit system. The EU, the UK are on board with that. He wants that so badly because that'll get him to the billionaire club. Mark Carney desperately wants to join that billionaire club with his buddies, the McCain family, the Irving Oil family, and the Bronfman family, among others. This all comes down to money. People are greedy and they'll do anything to enrich themselves. And a guy like Carney, there's never enough money. They always want more. They want more. People making very valid points in here like this guy. Back to Reagan's point, we had free and fair trade with the US. The US is trying to manipulate that. If you look at manufacturing, we actually had a deficit in goods. Only surplus was in energy, and we sell it to them at a discount. Yeah, and then they refine our oil and then sell it around the world and make money from it. They had a great deal. Trump's taking advantage of the situation because he can. And it's not like everything was fair, though. Obviously, the dairy cartel, it's not fair. There's a couple sectors it's not fair. But in these other sectors now, like steel, aluminum, autos, forestry, are all getting hammered. But that's just going to make things more expensive for Americans who need to buy houses made of wood that comes from Canada with tariffs on it. So it's a matter of time before Americans are going to get pissed off with this because their cars and their houses are become a lot more expensive. But Trump can do this for about a year or so before they're really going to start seeing the changes. But the question is, how many businesses move to America in that time? That's the gamble Trump's doing here. And if it pays off, then there's a whole bunch more manufacturing in America, and then their GDP goes up. I mean, their stock market's hitting record highs. It's kind of hard to argue against what he's doing here from the American point of view. And unfortunately, as I keep mentioning, who is this guy representing? How can he be representing us when this is what he's invested in?